Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series in economics. And in this particular video lecture, I'm going to be talking about two of the introductory microeconomics courses I'm teaching at Rowan University in the fall of 2017. So the one course runs on Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. 3 to quarter after. It runs from 2 to 3:15 p.m. in the Business Hall, room 121, and the other section runs in the same building, same room, and runs from 3:30 to 4:45. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to review one of these because the information is pretty much the same on both of those. All right, so my office hours occur in Robinson 317M, and they occur on Mondays and Wednesdays from 12:30 to 1:30 and from 5 to 6 p.m. That's my phone number. I'll be honest with you, I'd prefer people not call me. Only way I think it would be appropriate to call would be for the student, if let's say your internet access is out, and there's an issue that you can't reach me via email. So make sure you realize that I just put that there for emergency purposes in case you have technical issues that prevent you from emailing me. That's my email address, pascal@rowan.edu. I'll also just give you a little bit of overview about myself. I have right now 24 years of university teaching experience in economics, mostly at Rutgers University. This is my first semester at Rowan teaching courses. Also, I'd like to point out to you that I have worked in the private sector for a number of years, and I've run my own business for almost 2 decades. So you should realize that I have a dual perspective of professor, and of entrepreneur and working in the private sector. So I try to bring both of those perspectives to the course itself. There's your textbook. Right here, Microeconomics, McConnell, Bruin, Flynn, 20th edition. Also, Blackboard class website, regular access to a computer, and internet access. Those are the things that you're going to need for this course. The course itself is designed to expose students to important terms and concepts related to the subject of microeconomics. Additionally, the course illustrates how economists analyze economic phenomena. And this just lists out some of the main things that we're going to be reviewing in the course. Scarcity and trade-offs are very important because it means that you have to make some decision with respect to dealing with scarcity. And whenever you deal with that, you have to make trade-offs. So we'll be using the production possibilities frontier to illustrate this issue. Also, we're going to be taking a look at supply, demand, and the basic functioning of markets, particularly what an equilibrium is in a marketplace, and how equilibrium changes in the market. And further, we will be looking at applications of supply and demand analysis in the real world, particularly as it relates to government policies and how they impact markets. We will be also looking at elasticity and its application, and we're going to be calculating 3 different elasticities. So I think this is a very important section, understanding what an elasticity is, how to calculate it, how to interpret the results, etc., and why is it useful in different situations. We'll be looking at household behavior, consumer choice, and the behavior of firms. We'll be looking at particularly the concept of utility maximization and profit maximization. Also, we'll be taking a look at firms themselves, and we're going to be looking at long-run and short-run costs relating to a firm. We'll be looking at the cost and output decision that firms make, and in particular, students should need to understand the difference between fixed and variable costs. We look at the spectrum of competition, from perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. The important section here is how the assumptions about each of these market structures impacts the analysis that is undertaken. Then we'll take a look at specific markets, in particular land, labor, and capital. We'll look at the concepts of externalities, public goods, social choice, especially the impact of externalities on markets and why public goods are different from private goods. And particularly the course as a whole is looking at the impact of economic context on human experience and activity. These are the core goals at Rowan right here. All right, so these are included in here just to give you an idea of some of the core goals at Rowan and how this course fits in with those core goals. Preparation for class, I think it's very important for students to read the material prior to lecture. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold going on right now. So it's important because you can read through the textbook and some of the things you'll understand relatively easily, while there are other things that you might not completely understand. So if you do this, if you read the text and the chapters ahead of time before I talk about them, you'll get an idea of what you particularly need to pay attention in a particular lecture. So I strongly recommend that students read the chapters prior to class. Excuse me. Don't be shy about asking questions. All right. The reason being is I sometimes I can't figure out whether students are getting a particular concept. So if you don't understand something, make sure you ask me about it during class. Alternately, you can see me after class if you need to ask some questions and you don't feel comfortable doing so. And you can come to my office hours or make an appointment for additional office hours. Grading, the course itself, we have 3 tests, an optional final, and 10 homework assignments. Also, attendance counts towards the grade for the course. I will be randomly taking attendance during the semester. The tests themselves only encompass material that was covered previously. So, for example, we'll have a test somewhere around week 5, and that will only cover material that was covered from week 1 to week 5. We'll have another test roughly in week 10, and that will cover material from week 6 to 10, etc. The final is optional only for students who complete all 3 tests. All right. Also, if you miss a test, the optional final will replace the test that you missed. Obviously there are contingencies related to this, so if you have documented medical reason and want to take a makeup test, that can be arranged, but you have to give me the appropriate medical documentation. Here is the relative weight here. So the homework assignments are 25%, attendance is 10%, the tests are 60%, and the Rutgers Core Assessment is 5%. The Rutgers Core Assessment is mandatory, has to be given, and it has to count for 5% of your grade. And this core assessment will be given the first class after the second test. I normally place the dates of the tests on the syllabus. However, as I said previously, this is my first semester at Rowan. So, excuse me again. Making that shift to another university, how things are set up, etc. And also, I normally teach night courses, and they only occur once a week. They're one night a week classes. So these classes are 2 days a week. So I didn't think I could give an accurate representation as to the exact date that the tests themselves would occur. Hopefully, after this semester is done, and for the spring semester, I can use that experience to better get an understanding of when the tests are going to occur. Here's the grading criteria itself. They match the criteria at Rowan. Most importantly, make sure you know this. There are no exceptions to this. There is no extra credit for the course. I've never given extra credit in 24 years that I have been a professor. So realize that you should do your work and keep up with the work during the semester, because there is no vehicle known as extra credit for improving your grade. Classroom behavior, just realize that I expect people to act like adults. All right. Be sure that you go to the website here, the web link here about the policies on student behavior, and you're expected to adhere to them. So realize that you should turn off your electronic devices. I don't expect people's cell phones to be going off during class, etc. If you have an American with Disabilities Act issue, you should arrange the appropriate accommodations through the Special Services Center, and then submit that documentation to me. Also, the accommodation policy in a little more detail. You can go to the Success Center. Here's the phone number associated with them. They're in Savitz Hall, and they're there to answer any questions you have about any possible accommodations in the classroom. Academic integrity. Rowan is committed to academic integrity, and students are required to acknowledge and cite others. Realize that if I catch you cheating, again, excuse me. So you are responsible for understanding the information in the Rowan Student Information Guide and the University Academic Integrity Policy. You're responsible for understanding them and the different types of misconduct, and you are expected to avoid them. We are using Blackboard as the CSM, the classroom CMS, this classroom management system. You should check Blackboard on a daily basis, as I will be sending out messages here. It might be about homeworks, it might be about something interesting, it might be reminders, etc. And you should send your correspondence via the email function in Blackboard. Also, when you're sending correspondence, this is especially important, and it's become more and more important over the last 5 years. All right. So, students should clearly explain the issue that they face and write in a manner consistent with professional correspondence. You should receive a response in 24 hours. Normally, I do that. I try to check my email multiple times in any given day. Also, with respect to deadlines, be sure that you remember what you're expected. I expect you to meet your deadlines. If you want an extension, you have to request that via email prior to the due date and time. If you do not do that, if you miss the homework and you want an extension and request it after the date, there will be penalties as follows. For the first 24 hours, 30%. And it goes up by 10% for every 24-hour period. And then once an assignment is more than 7 days late, it is automatically entered as a 0. So if you want partial credit and you're late, you need to get in contact with me before 7 days have passed past the deadline, because once the deadline has passed and it's 7 days after that deadline, you will automatically receive a 0. If you email me prior to the deadline, I will give you a 1-day extension without penalty. You don't even have to give me any reason for it. You just say, I can't get it done on time. Can I get an extra 24 hours? And you will automatically be granted a 24-hour extension. So make sure you realize that. I'm very strict about this. All right. Also realize that if there's medical reasons that you can asking for an extension or to get relief outside of what is listed here in this headline section, you're going to have to provide me with medical documentation in a timely fashion. For example, emailing me and saying, well, I was sick and I couldn't get it done is not going to be acceptable. You're going to have to email me and provide me with documentation. Also realize saying, well, if the homework assignment was due Wednesday night, being sick on Wednesday is not acceptable when you have roughly 7 days to get the assignments done. Save all your classroom materials until your grade is recorded. No incomplete grades will be assigned unless you ask for an incomplete grade in advance prior to me submitting the grades, and we come to an agreement as to how the incomplete work will be completed, what the new timeline is, etc. So if you don't do the work, you disappear, and I submit the grades, you're going to get an F for the course because you did not contact me to make arrangements for an incomplete grade and make arrangements to make up the work and set up a new time frame. And here's some additional information about how to address a student complaint about a grade. I'll be honest with you, as I said previously, in 24 years of university level teaching, I think I've had 2 students complain about a grade they got in my course. All right, so I follow exactly the criteria, etc. So I think one instance I did enter their grade in incorrectly. I typed it in wrong when I submitted it, so I submitted a change of grade for it. All right. And lastly, the appendix just maps out what we're going to be covering during the entire semester. So we have section 1 here, which ends with a test, and we go through chapters 1 through 7. We have section 2, which ends with test number 2, and we go through chapters 9 through 13. And then the final section, number 3, ends with test number 3, and we go through chapters 14, 15, 16, 19, and 21, and then the optional final occurs. So make sure you remember that the final is optional, but to qualify for the optional final, you have to complete all 3 of the tests during the semester. So that's it for the review. I do this in video form because I think this is a more efficient way to review this material. Spending half of a class session, 45 minutes, to go through all of this information when it can be done in a video format. So it frees up some time for us during the semester.